Hello, everybody. I think it is streaming now. Sorry, I had a little bit of trouble getting things started. I welcome everybody who's joined for the first time. Um, I'm trying different times and different things, so you know, I've got to work out different things. Hopefully, you guys hear me okay. I'm hearing myself fine, so I'm hoping that everybody hears. Just let me know if you don't hear or have any trouble connecting, anything like that. I'll be monitoring the chat. Since this is a live show, things are to go wrong in some ways, and it's meant to be somewhat casual and open sort of discussion. And hopefully, it's just rather than me talking, it is sort of a conversation between me and some of you, as well as possibly some guests in the future, so that we have a bit more fluid discussion between people. Thanks for confirming that, Trevin. If you have any topic specific question, then just let me know. I'll be happy to discuss. Um, Sometimes these topics I know a little bit, but not necessarily the very expert. So it's meant more as a discussion, open discussion, so that I get to ask questions as well as I get to answer some of those things based on my knowledge and based on my experience. So we'll just kick it off here. Today's topic is rendering software. I just kind of included all sorts of rendering software out there here. So we've got Twinmotion, Enscape, V-Ray, Lumion, D5 Render. Those are the ones that I kind of have used in the past. Therefore, I just kind of included. Those are mostly what's known as the real-time renderer. So I feel that I have most amount of experience in real-time renderer. So I just decided to include those names. But if there is something that you know or you have a good experience with, just put it down on the chat. I would like to know what kind of other type of renderers that you use in sort of daily basis or have experience with, and just so that I understand, what kind of renderers are out there. Maybe I need to look out for. Just give me brief feedback on things that you guys use. I'll be happy to discuss about. And all the names are shown here with no sort of order. I just kind of randomly showing it here. But if you're a long time channel follower, you'll know that I'm deeply related to Enscape, but also I have featured Lumion and V-Ray in the past before. I did try Twinmotion and D5 Render. They both are very good as well. Um, it's just that it just haven't really, I would say, melted into my daily workflow. So that's something that I haven't really taken it as deeper dive just yet. But I know its capabilities. I mean, rather, their capabilities and also their sort of benefits as well. Just to kind of cover my sort of personal experience with different type of renderers, I actually started everything off of V-Ray. So it kind of goes back to my beginning days where I did most of the modeling and drawings out of SketchUp, and SketchUp and V-Ray combination was really good in terms of getting the renders out, as well as just workflow really worked. It outputted sort of the styles that I preferred. I always have favored outlines. I don't know if you guys could relate to that at all, but I really like having sort of a little bit of edges or outlines shown on V-Ray side. It was called Toon Render for quite a bit. And then later I just kind of implemented more of a Photoshop workflow where I just apply outline off of SketchUp and then just superimpose on top of V-Ray render, and it always looked really good. That is sort of the style that I prefer in terms of render. I don't think I was ever a professional visualizer or render or CGI person. It kind of goes with many different names, doesn't it? Um, I would never consider myself and such. I more have a backbone in architectural design. So design is sort of what I would like to label myself more so than a visualizer or CGI person or professional renderer. However, I have a deep interest in rendering software just because of its sort of technicality and the weird things that you have to learn. I just kind of like troubleshooting and figuring things out, so I just kind of became somewhat more interested in it. But all there, what I'm trying to say is, with SketchUp and V-Ray days, I preferred V-Ray. And then with the introduction of more real-time rendering, I have myself daily running V-Ray and Lumion at the same time. In my opinion, a lot of workflows that was going into Lumion kind of resorted more of kind of finish your product and then ship everything into Lumion, therefore work it and detail it, make it really look good, and then output your result and ship it off, and that is sort of the end of the project. So it meant that Lumion was being used for more towards the end of the project, where all the designs has been solidified. When during the design phase, it wasn't really being utilized as much because it still needed sort of import and export between my working file into a final output. So that just kind of meant that uh, Lumion always sort of was on the sort of back end in the progress of project workflow, and then sort of intermittent type of progress renderings or working in progress rendering, conceptual rendering. If you follow the channel, I kind of use that term quite a lot, conceptual rendering. I do that in V-Ray. It just was kind of quick, meant to be somewhat sketchy, not as final, not as detailed. But that's why I kind of preferred maintaining that sort of outline, sort of more sketchy look, less sort of, I would say, detailed or realistic look that I was going for. So that's what I sort of did in the past. And quickly, I think it's going back to, I would say, 2016 or so. I can be very wrong about years. I'm terrible with remembering numbers, but um, with the introduction of Enscape on one time, I was just, I don't know, surprised by how much I was able to achieve with Enscape. So I kind of fully went on board with Enscape for my daily workflows. So hence why you see more content on my channel about Enscape. And also I have a pretty good relationship with the company Enscape. They're great folks that I continuously work with. In fact, I have a webinar that is coming up with Enscape next week. So I'll also leave that link in the chat so you guys could also register for. Um, yeah, so that's sort of where I am. And all of different tools and rendering software, they all have different benefits, different type of uh, sort of caveats as well. So you have to consider those. So something that I did want to talk about is the price. And before we go into that, if you guys would just kind of put down what kind of render you typically use, or if there is any render that you wanted to hear more about, if you leave that on the chat, I'll be happy to discuss a bit more about that as to what I know. Um, yeah, Anastasi is saying, what about Twinmotion? I have tried Twinmotion for a short period of time, so I don't have deep skin in the game for Twinmotion as much. But because it's got backbone in Unreal, and actually, I had tried Twinmotion even way before it was anywhere near Unreal and purchased by Unreal. And it was really good. To me, price point was something that wasn't really working. And also, I was just so exposed on V-Ray at the time. So I had not used. And as soon as it just jumped to Unreal, I think people realize its capabilities, and I know it is sort of the preferred platform for a lot of people as well. And I think the amount of assets that you can bring in into Motion and how easy it is to animate things, I think it is great. Um, but for me, I just kind of prefer a way that software works inside of the modeling software that I typically use, such as SketchUp or Revit. And Twinmotion, when I had tried, it wasn't as, I would say, intuitive is what I had tried, but that is definitely something I need to try more. And I know it has improved a lot, so I am keen to find out a bit more as well. And Unreal is such a fantastic platform. A lot of games are developed in Unreal Engine, and if architects and any 3D modelers could utilize those sort of assets and platform, I think it's just a win-win on all different sides. So yeah, and Trevin is saying my university focuses just on Lumion for the undergrads. I'm actually curious, how is the university affording Lumion licenses? Is first thing that comes in my mind. I don't know if it is free for the educational licenses, but the biggest problem that I have with Lumion is the fact that the price tag. Let's look at some prices actually. And before I jump onto that, Scott, he uses Arnold software rendering, usually on external farm, but not fast, but good results. Okay, let's go ahead and also look at the Arnold software. I'm actually curious what that is. Let's close this out. Render. So Arnold is Autodesk. I know some other renderers such as like Keyshot for SketchUp, but Arnold is something that I wasn't aware of. Thanks for sharing. I'm always keen to learn about different type of renders and what kind of options we have. Hmm. What is Arnold? It's a ray tracing renderer. Interesting. Looking through gallery here. Some movie clips. Very interesting. Okay, well, let's also look at some of other ones that we already mentioned on the chat. So Twinmotion, just for some folks who are not aware, I guess I can kind of explain this a little bit. Twinmotion used to be a completely different company who does real-time rendering with some limits. But Epic Games or Unreal, Epic Games have purchased Twinmotion, and Twinmotion became under the umbrella of Epic Games, and Epic Games is the guys who developed or owns Unreal Engine, and Unreal Engine gets used in many different gaming software. So I believe Fortnite is also Unreal. Um, uh, I believe Battleground also is. I might have to double check, but it is a engine that is meant for games, and it's fantastic. It's probably one of the best, if not like one out there in terms of a gaming engine. So there's tons of assets and platform to utilize from, and it meant that now Twinmotion architectural visualization software is now utilizing all of those capabilities. So it just became, it opened a huge door to all of us to use. And something that I do want to go over, aside from capabilities, is the price. Do they have price listed? I always have to search these Twinmotion prices. And if if you had signed up for Twinmotion when it was in sort of a beta, when they just was purchased by Unreal, um, you were able to get sort of the unlimited trial free version, and that's actually what I have since I jumped on that boat before. But for now, for you to use it for commercial purposes, it is $500. $500 per a year, maybe. But for education, it is free. It is usually some sort of subscription, but it's not telling me. Did I just completely miss? Includes free upgrades until December 31st. So I guess it is for the year. $500. Okay. Um, what about Lumion? I should have probably clicked on this one. So Lumion, for me, this is where it comes a little bit completely different sort of creature, if you would. Normal version is $1,800, and that is for like a more of a perpetual license per version, and then pro version, which includes all different sort of library. So this is 1/3 of the content library, and the full library is $3,600. If you're a big firm and you've got a ton of people who can utilize sort of floating license, these things start to make sense. But for a sole practitioner who's using the license only certain amount of time, that could be a tough pill to swallow. Those are sort of the prices gap that you have to work with. But that is not to say it is bad or anything. Lumion is fantastic renderer. I also use it daily drove for quite a long time. When it comes to sort of the end result, when you're trying to ship off your project for a potential tenant or to really sell off as like a marketing material, Lumion is fantastic because you can really hone in a lot of things in here to get very realistic, and you can put on tons of effect. I've always liked it for that. I mean, look at how it is capable of doing those things. You can really take your model into completely different level. However, once you have dialed all of these things in, to me at least, it seemed a little bit more, I would say, troublesome to modify things. As soon as your model changes, all of those things need to be remodeled and replaced on the modeler and sorry on Lumion side, and that seemed to be somewhat troublesome. Although it does have live sync, in my experience, it didn't work as smoothly at times. So those were a little bit of caveats that I had to jump through. But other than that, as a real-time render animation, it just does fantastic animation, and even still shots. You can have ton of effects, so it is something that I can definitely vouch for in terms of the quality that you can bring with Lumion. And I've seen a lot of professional firms who are like a rendering companies using Lumion because of its capabilities. And I really like the fact that it is just capable of taking all sorts of different 3D data into a one Lumion file. You can have a bunch of furnitures coming in as a SketchUp file, and you can plunk that in into Lumion. Also, your main model could be off of Revit, maybe like a complex roof system is out of 3D Max. Then you can also bring that in, and you can all join all different modeling data into Lumion as a final rendering software, and that I think is a huge benefit, being able to take in different type of 3D data into one single renderer software. I think it is a huge benefit for anyone who's looking to collect data. Again, those things are possible in Unreal and some other softwares out there, but there are limitations. But I feel like Lumion has sort of better compatibility in how materials come in, because it takes sort of a native format rather than a converted format off of a 3D modeling software, because once you convert those data, you tend to lose some of the materiality. Let me go back a little bit to the chat that is here. Um, Anastasia says, thanks by the way, because of you paid MSI W66. What do you mean? Because of you paid? You mean you bought a good computer? I think that's what you meant. Okay, great. Yeah, I still have it in the back shelf. I'm supposed to make another sponsored content with MSI using W66, so that is coming. I really enjoy that laptop. It is a performance laptop. Whenever I need performance on the go. Oh, it's good to know that Lumion is. Trevin is saying Lumion was available for education. So, yeah, it might have been a pain, but if you can get the free version, I mean, it's a ton of value. It just works with so many different softwares natively, and that's a huge, huge benefit. And I really like their folks too, but sometimes there are some caveats that I have to go over in terms of working with Lumion in the middle of design phase could be a little bit of troublesome in my opinion, or is not as easy, not troublesome, um, is what I have experienced in the past. And because this show is not sponsored by anyone, I can freely talk about my opinion, and I'm not bound by any sort of rules or anything like that. So, this is your chance. You can get the answer out of me. um, Lumion is your favorite? Yes, absolutely. Brad says, and uh, oh yeah, W66 is a very good computer. Yeah, I'm deeply related with MSI at this point, and I have tried many different products, laptops from MSI, even some monitors, and I really like their sort of professional lineups. They have been providing a good performance. They seem to know what to do in terms of getting performance. There are a little bit of things that I prefer, but I try to voice it in some ways to my viewers as well as to them in terms of like product feedback. So, keep an eye out for any new releases, any new laptops, computer, that sort of thing. MSI has been really good supporting my channel, and thank you guys for always, watching my videos and having some interest in it. It just really keeps me going, and that's what really matters to me. Um, Sakina Ali is saying our uni computers have Twinmotion, V-Ray, and Blender. Wow, it's completely suited out. Good. I usually install Enscape for my preference, but I should probably learn V-Ray so I don't have to go extra step. Um, So using a blender or Twinmotion is an extra step, or you mean using an Enscape is an extra step? V-Ray, for I would say V-Ray's backbone is still with CPU bound rendering, so it not necessarily real time rendering, but more of CPU bound where you hit the render button and wait for it to render. And I'm coming from the back in the days where it was a bucket render, not even a progress render, where it becomes less noisy. The denoiser days were much later than the bucket rendering. So just watching rendering and buckets going around, the little squares that go around is what's called the buckets for the V-Ray people who long-term V-Ray people, and uh, yeah, it's been really good. And there were a few settings that you just have to like know what to do with it, and then once you click render, you can get pretty expected results, and you can always Photoshop the heck out of it. I mean, Photoshop's always our friend, isn't it? So uh, that's what I used to do with V-Ray. And ever since it jumped to progress rendering, and then also now they have real-time rendering with V-Ray, and that is still sort of under development. So the quality that you get out of real-time render is not necessarily the same as what you get out of like the CPU bound render. And for a long time they had hybrid render as well. To me, it still gave me a little bit of unexpected results. Some things didn't work out as well as I expected to, but V-Ray had been sort of the standard of renderings, and it is used in so many different industries. Therefore, they have a huge user base where you can utilize your stuff from. I should flash V-Ray on the screen, shouldn't I? So V-Ray is managed by a company called Chaos Group. Also, fantastic people are there that I know, friends there. Currently, it covers 3D Max, Maya, SketchUp, Rhino, Revit, Cinema 4D, Houdini, and even Revit. I don't think it showed there, but and they recently changed their logo too. I kind of like it. Yeah, and they purchase different type of renderers and they merge. But obviously, I had my days with V-Ray for SketchUp. V-Ray 5. I mean, I started with them in V-Ray 2, so it's come a very, very long way. And what's new? Let's click on that. I don't know if you guys can hear it. V-Ray Vision. It's all different type of softwares come up with all different things, and it's so hard to keep up with what's new. I have to hear from you guys what is new and what is available nowadays. And light gen is another thing. You can tweak the light amount of light and the light quality later on after the fact. There's so much you can do with V-Ray. In terms of amount of control you have, I would say it even has it more so than Lumion. But you have to be really dialed in for one specific scene for you to dial things in. And to me, at least, it perhaps is different for your workflow. But to me, being able to navigate and just keep on working with your design, you could be looking at super realistic corner of a sofa, but what I'm more interested in is figuring out how big the window is, or how big of an opening is, or how big the mass is, rather than tweaking sky color or a light fixture. So those are, I don't know, depends on what you're trying to achieve. Obviously, if you want fantastic renders that are meant for killer shot, the money shot, then the amount of control you have is amazing inside of V-Ray, at least. Let me stop it right there. Brad is saying Arnold is a render engine for 3D Max, right? I would assume so because it is an Autodesk software, but then Autodesk softwares don't necessarily talk so well to each other. But I would assume at least it works better with 3D Max, because 3D Max is also Autodesk. Arnold now comes with the Maya standard. It replaces Mental Ray. Cool. So Maya is taking Arnold. Okay, so that's nice. Yeah, so depending on your workflow, Lumion could be the better suited things for you. You use LiveSync with Rhino. Nice. Yeah, that's what I kind of experienced in the past, that using LiveSync sometimes breaks things, especially on a complex model. And when one or two materials or a model or geometry goes missing during your production, it really breaks, and turning your model on and off. There was one time, not one time, multiple times where LiveSync is on and I have Lumion on, in my modeling software, whether it be Revit or SketchUp on. I don't really use Rhino, uh, unfortunately, but my point is, I have LiveSync on, and it just wouldn't show up on Lumion, and I have to go back and forth. If something like that happens, or material or geometry is missing, then turning on and off, it just doesn't work. I have to shut off both sides and reload both sides. It really is time consuming when you just need this rendering done and out. Then it becomes really troublesome. That's why it becomes more of a end of the design rather than during design, is kind of what I have resorted to. But love it otherwise. Yes, absolutely, is what Trevin is saying. Alejandro is saying my university uses Redshift, but I personally don't like the interface. Redshift. Okay, another name. Let's learn. Redshift render. Thanks for mentioning it. M2 animation on Battlefield, full CG trailer created by Warhammer. Okay. Gallery. Let's look at gallery. Overwatch. Product. I don't know what's happening. It's a little bit slow here. But it works with Maya, 3D Max, Cinema 4D, and Houdini and Katana. I actually don't know really Katana. It's GPU accelerated, so it is a GPU bound render. Accelerated biased render. Powerful GPU accelerated render built to meet specific demands of contemporary high-end production rendering. So many rendering softwares out there, isn't it? And Anastasia, do you know about Katya? No, I know it. Not today topic, but I want to have some tips. I believe Katya existed for a very long time, because I remember at one point I was looking at Katya and V-Ray when I was trying to learn a render. Katya rendering. And I just couldn't get Katya to work with SketchUp at the time, if I'm not mistaken. And V-Ray at that time seemed a bit more mainstream, so I decided to have my feet in V-Ray, is what I just kind of decided to do. But if I'm thinking the right software, Katya is another product design type of rendering, is what I am aware. Looks like a lot of automobile and products in terms of Katya. Sometimes renderers are really good for architecture. Some renderers are good for product design. Some are for animation. Some are better. And it really depends on what 3D modeling software you base off of. If you're coming from Maya, obviously you're much better off doing animations with that rendering engine. But if you're something like SolidWorks or product design type of software, then obviously the renderer is going to be more geared towards that. That's all I can tell you about Katya. Sorry. Have you tried or know Chief Architect Premiere? Oh, thanks for mentioning another name. Samuel Tam is saying that. Let's try Chief Architect Premiere. What is that? You guys are making me search for all weird things. Chief Architect is a like a sort of very th- niche 3D modeling software, isn't it? I've seen their name when I was working with a I forgot Canvas. They worked with Chief Architect from what I remember. Yeah. So that's where I remember I heard it from. And this is also a modeling and rendering, I guess. Building design tools. Cool. So by the looks of it, does very basic type of rendering out of. I'm understanding this is like kind of ready made. Like you can do all sort of puzzle piece type of modeling, and then you can do rendering out of that. Pretty cool. 3D rendering and virtual tours. 360 renderings. Cool. And you can work out details. You know, this is like easier version of architectural design software. Maybe it is really good for, residential design is what I'm seeing at least. Samples gallery. You got PDF. It's really similar to sort of this SketchUp type of look, isn't it? I remember days with like Kirkithia, Katya, not Katya, sorry, Kirkithia and the Thea render, where there are some like very niche SketchUp based rendering software who kind of outputs these type of renderings. Pretty cool. Let's read some more comments. Brad is saying you tried download D5 render for free. Once I downloaded it, it said PC was not compatible because I have to use one NVIDIA flash drive they recommended. Not sure what flash drive, but I know for a fact D5 is ray tracing and they really prefer RTX cards. So not even like the ones that are entry level RTX because it's so heavily based on RTX type of rendering, true ray tracing. So I'm trying to work with them to do some proper showcase of D5 render. I think they have a very, very good potential in terms of getting done, the renders. Just look at the quality. I mean, I'm sure ton of time has been spent on this sort of visuals, but the amount of visuals you can get out of ray tracing, and you can really get performance out of it. And the things that you need is RTX 3080 or 3080 Super. I have, sorry, 2080 Super. I have 2080 Super. So if I were to render something, it's going to take double the amount of what 3080 will take. But if you have itty bitty 26 RTX 2060, it is not going to like it, is what I have been told from the officials of D5 render folks. So, I think this thing also has a very good potential. It is definitely under my radar to learn more about it. And, I really like the fact that there's so many tools out there for us to utilize. And, for us who's trying to pick up the right tools, having more competition and having more variety and options available is really, really great. It just means that it just gets better, and in turn, we get better tools. And actually, I don't know their pricing. I also have access to theirs, but professional is 480 per user, so that's what you can enjoy. For community free license, you can have the basic asset library. I think this sort of cost model really works. I think 500 or $600 per user type of per license kind of works, and I think they should at least give out some sort of free model. It really is daunting for any of us professional going into a new renderer because you now have to pick up and learn how this thing works and how I can implement. And having a very short period of trial period, like 10 days or even a month, could be very daunting between projects. So if any of you are listening coming from any of these companies, having a free version with a limited sort of compatibility, like let's say even watermark your thing so that people could just unlimited learn your software. Don't stop people from learning your software. Don't have a hard sort of cap in terms of trial date. Or maybe, I don't know, you have what just like some renderer does, a maybe a week or two with a full capabilities, and then after that it becomes watermarked and not really usable for professional usage, but you can keep using it to learn the software. I think that's how all of these software needs to be, because it really takes more than a few weeks to learn different type of render. And when you have a hard cap, it could be really difficult for any of us professionals could pick up a tool, even if you're in school, between projects and schoolwork, to pick up a new tool. Brett, yeah. It is definitely a long day. I was pretty ready for bed, but again, this is something that I promised to spend Tuesday night with. So here I am, and thank you for spending your precious time with us and me, and I appreciate it. Alejandro saved up. Alejandro said saved up for upgrades, no problem with the GPU, but I have 12 gigabytes of RAM, 4-core CPU. I use GPU accelerated rendering, but would an upgrade to my CPU or improve rendering performance? Depends on what rendering software you're using. You mentioned Redshift. Oops, sorry. You mentioned Redshift prior. Anything that is CPU bound, 4-core could be limiting, but I'm assuming you might be talking about laptop or desktop. Laptop is all bunched up into little tiny bodies. So if your CPU is throttling, then it's going to introduce heat and all sort of different things into GPU. Therefore, they're all going to throttle together. So there's your limit. When it's desktop, 4-core CPU, and then I don't know what you mean. Oh, okay. So you're using GPU accelerated rendering. Then you don't really need to concern about CPU. CPU is not going to be your bottleneck. You can use previous gens. I'd say 4-core or maybe more could be desired, but I would say most case scenario you're probably limited by the capabilities of a GPU. Is what you ought to upgrade your GPU. I don't know what your GPU is right now, but having more recent GPU, if you can get your hands on, is probably what's more desired. As someone about to, Sophie says, as someone about to apply for their architectural assistant job, do you reckon mastering one rendering software is better than trying? That's a very, very good question. Sophie, thank you for asking that question. Uh, so Sophie is asking whether it is more valuable to learn one software and mastering it versus learning few different ones in terms of employability. Uh, in my very humble opinion, I would say learn few different things, uh, and be ready to master a few of them at least. It just in terms of employability, or at least for me, I have. Uh, you can always kind of use different softwares in a firm. I haven't come across a firm say you have to use a renderer, otherwise you're fired, or you are not allowed to work with us unless you use this renderer. I haven't heard that. They usually have some range of rendering softwares available, or it may not be available, but you can sometimes talk them out of it. They're more, unless you're going for like some sort of professional rendering firm for architectural or architect alike employment. They're not going to expect you to use like a one dedicated software, is what I have seen in the past. So, I went in knowing V-Ray a little bit, but I picked up Enscape and Lumion whilst I was employed. And I got my current job knowing Enscape and V-Ray and Lumion, and I can do some others. But they're more keen to know whether you can work in SketchUp or Revit or Rhino. They're more concerned about the 3D modeling software than the render. So that's why my sort of 2 cents in it. Um, I would say, and also for your future too, even if you depart from that specific employer, you still have that sort of knowledge in different softwares, and that always comes in as a benefit. Once you learn a software, you can sort of use the same sort of logic and set of tools in sort of set of line of thought into different softwares as well. Terminologies is similar, so you can learn these sort of like something like ambient occlusion. That's some like a rendering jargon that I like using. Ambient occlusion, if you have learned it from V-Ray, then you can use it on Lumion, or you can use it in different type of render. They're going to use that similar words like reflection, refraction, ambient occlusion, denoising. So once you pick up that knowledge, then you can just spread it across different platforms. The second comment you had, for example, I am planning to master Enscape as I have already started using it. Great. I like Enscape too. But I am considering learning V-Ray and Lumion as it may be useful. Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. Time is limited though. Yes, I agree with that too. I'm working towards submitting my final year of work, but I also have prepared a portfolio which I will apply for a job with. I'm in the UK. Well, I am from UK too, or I spent 5 years in UK. Um, Sorry for an essay. No, absolutely not. You shouldn't be sorry. Thank you so much for leaving that comment, asking that question. But yeah, my answer is pretty much the same. I personally have learned V-Ray and Lumion in the midway of being employed. So those three softwares are definitely not all, but useful tools to pick up. They have very different characteristics, and that's why I feel it is valuable to learn those variety of tools. I personally prefer Enscape in daily basis, but whenever I need to, I would pick up Lumion or V-Ray. I have used V-Ray daily before using Enscape, and I have used Lumion daily Till this day, I do use Lumion for a certain type of tasks, and it's very useful. That is as a student, because once you become professional, your firm will dictate how much money you can spend on a specific piece of software. It will be very expensive for a firm to maintain all three different softwares. So you might have to argue or learn who has what and just use that software when they provide. Moving on to next comment. We're a little bit running out of time. I just want to say thank you. Yeah, thank you. PCORREA77. Oculus Quest 2, Lenovo laptop for Enscape VR using guidance. Thank you. Thank you for watching my videos and giving me feedback. You know, uh, since you brought up Oculus Quest, I do want to include VR talk in the next following topics. So perhaps we can nerd out about those topics in the very near future. And also, I have plans to perhaps purchase Quest 2 as well. I currently own only Quest 1, that's in the background, and the AirLink, which is basically projecting the VR screen um, wirelessly. Currently, it is available as like the virtual desktop thing where you can sideload. This is a completely different topic, but Quest 2 is available to do AirLink for free. So since you purchase, I'm sure you can utilize that and enjoy that. That's something I want to do in the near future. Perhaps a review video or some tutorial on the VR, something that I'm always interested in. Sakina is saying, begging you to please let your software context let them have common shortcuts. Going from Revit to Rhino and having remember simple things like which mouse click does what. Yeah, different renders does orbit, pan, all different. It is, and all of those is such a muscle memory. Switching between them is yeah. And you always, after a few misclicks, you always realize, oh, I have done something wrong, and then you have to go back. Yeah, but it's so fundamental. Even if I bring it, I'm sure they'll disregard. that's that's how these games are, right? Brad says the best rendering program once you get comfortable with. Yep. And one that does not crash. Very, very important. It should not crash. And I would say the one that stays out of trouble, like does not throw error or discrepancy. Like sometimes you hit render and like that material doesn't show up as expected, or geometry is missing. That is so much of a headache. That is, I would say that is more annoying than a couple of misclicks because of your navigation or shortcuts that you're used to. It is really irritating. There is nothing more irritating than waiting hours for something to render and finding out it crashed. Absolutely right, Brad. Thank you so much. Vera was very helpful. Thank you, Sophie. Today I use AirLink and works fine. Yes, absolutely. Good to hear. I think I'm going to wrap up today's session here. It was a good 1 hour talk. Thank you so much for everyone joining. I've truly enjoyed talking about different type of renders. Hopefully it was somewhat helpful for you to learn about new renders or some, just having a good chat. This is what this 1 hour is dedicated for. So thank you for jumping in and hearing me out and hearing some of these folks who have chatted with me. And again, I would I would look to have another conversation, perhaps next week or following weeks, about different set of topics. And yeah, we have a latecomer. And hi, Jared. you can always go back and watch. We were talking about rendering softwares. We have another AJAY Araj. Sorry, I'm probably butchering your name. Firstly, really appreciate what you're doing, new subscriber. Thank you so much for subscribing and watching my videos. You have a question. Yeticaster, which headset do you use with it? I have replaced my Yeticaster with Samsung Q9U is what you're seeing here, is not Yeticaster. And I'm using Black Shark V2 Pro. Wireless is what I'm using, and I am monitoring through with it, is my current setup. Make more videos with Lumion, Brad says. Yes, absolutely. That's what I'm planning on doing. Often I don't have enough content to share. Even if I have made a content, it's so hard to publicly share the client works. So, I always have to do double amount of work in order to share something in Lumion. But yeah, I really gotta wrap up, shouldn't I? So thank you so much for joining. I will announce the next week's topic. If you guys have any topic requests or something that you would like to talk about, just leave it down in a comment, and then I'll be happy to take those topics and have some discussion. I'm trying to have some guests on this show so that we talk about different expertise and different sort of experience than just myself. But until then, it will be just me. And if you enjoyed, please like and subscribe to my channel to continue watching these type of Tuesday talks as well as my regular videos. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I will see you next time.